Yeah, that seems like the major unlock. The fact that you can paste in code and have it explain something to you. Like I wish we had this years ago.
Yeah.
I remember when I had applied to a company, and they required it was a web designer position, and they required CSS3, which I had no experience with. I was like, I was like, a
Darn
little
it.
white lie, a little white lie. Yeah, sure, I know how to do it. I know CSS3.
Oh yeah, that's what I do all the time.
And then I got the job, and then it was 2 weeks to start, so I spent 2 weeks learning CSS3, which, I mean, to be fair, isn't the hardest thing, but it's still a new concept to learn.
Yeah.
But
did you get away with it? We are kind of live now, is what I always wanted to say. We are live.
And we are officially live.
We are officially live, exactly. I mean, this is just an experiment.
Hello.
Hello.
How are we doing today, Nick? Jumping into another design podcast episode.
Oh yeah, design table podcast to be specific. I'm always looking forward to our recording sessions. You know,
same here.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Or else we wouldn't do it.
No. We're doing this out of our free will. Like we're doing this because we want to. Yeah, I mean that's an important thing. And today we're going to talk about job titles. Not job titles, because there are so many. There used to be even more, and there are going to be some more in the future as well. And I feel like it's confusing, not only for designers, but also for people looking for designers.
Maybe we can start with our own job titles, and what does that mean in our day to day?
Yeah, that's a good one. Shall I go first?
Go for it.
What I put on my website is a UX and product designer.
Okay.
And that's because I see the shift to product designer as being the main job title. But not everyone's on that wave yet. So I'm trying to catch, two types of fish. The people looking for UX someone or a product someone. So I'm a UX and product designer.
That makes sense. So you have bait for different fish.
Yeah.
That's a terrible analogy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that makes any sense. Like, I mean, but it is true. I'm trying to appeal to different types of companies.
Okay, and when you're imagining someone having a liking towards UX or product, what does each title kind of speak to that different persona?
To me, it's the same. Like, I don't think there's a difference, but it's usually someone who's not a designer and they get hit by one of the buzzwords. I had a phone call. Someone told me like, yeah, well, one of my team members talked about this UI/UX thing. And then I started searching online and your name came up. It probably wouldn't have happened if I just called myself a product designer. But more, let's say, modern clients with some technical know-how, they're looking for product designers, and some of them are even very outspoken about, UX designer is not going to last, and it's all product design now. So that's why I have both. So it really depends on the buzzword they believe in.
Okay, so it sounds like an SEO play then.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. You caught me there.
There you go. On my side, I work in-house, so I'm senior product designer. So I'm following the trend, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
I think it just denotes like the all. I think it's become the all encompassing designer. So focused on not just one specific area, but like end to end, including the kind of business strategy as well. I think
Yeah.
that's why they kind of set that title, and that's the particular person that they're searching for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing. Like you can be very stubborn or be a visionary and say like, well, this is my label, this is my job title. But you
Mm.
also have to adjust to what people are looking for. What the most common job vacancy is labeled.
Mm. Because we had like these different, we have like UI, so the different titles. So we have like UI designer, we have UX designer, we have UI UX designer, and now the newly formed UX product designer. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
they're just, I think they came out of like larger enterprises, because I feel like startups, there's usually just a designer or maybe two designers max. But like larger companies, as part as companies get larger, they need more specialized people. So there's probably a team dedicated to just if they were called a UI designer, then you're just addressing the UI. So there's like aesthetics, and then UX was kind of everything before that, discovery, kind of mapping out the flows, etc. I think that's where that came out of, because I've never actually held the official title of UI designer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe it's just a consequence of living in the startup space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be. I and this is not based on any data at all, but I don't think the UI designer as a job title ever became as mainstream as UX designer.
Hmm.
And in the mainstream UX world, people assume that UI is part of the UX job title, and that's why you had this hybrid UI/UX designer role as well.
Yeah, so I always found it interesting why we separated the two. But maybe it's like a consequence of like who you're looking for. So I'm looking for someone who does UX and also does design as well.
Yeah.
But I always found that UX was to your point, like all encompassing. So like part of
Mm-hmm.
UX is how it looks. So it's like if you look at a giant circle, it's UX, and a smaller circle is the UI part. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah.
all UX.
Then you also have a few people who say, if you look at those circles again, that there's an even bigger circle around the UX circle, which is the CX circle.
Ah, okay. The customer experience.
Yeah, which I think is an even more niche job title. Not something that ever got to a mainstream size. And then there's another circle outside of the CX circle, which is service design, which I feel like is the job title that like pure old school UX people wanted
Mm-hmm.
the UX to be, and then UX turned out to be more UI/product, and then they went on their own and created service design
Mm-hmm.
as UX 2.0.
I'm less familiar with service design. I keep hearing it, but I never investigated. Could you kind of explain to me where
Yeah.
that came about?
Well, let's say it's in the startup world. I think it's less applicable. But if you provide if your product is part of a larger service, then you are looking at something off screen. One example from long ago, I might have mentioned it before, is the golf clubs/golf course that I used to do a project with. They had the member for a day experience, because golf membership is quite expensive, but they wanted to have a more mainstream appeal. And then they said like, well, you can be a member for one day, and that's their whole service. So it had some products that needed product design, your sign up form and sign in form, and that kind of stuff, kind of things. But all of these products were just one step into, in a larger service. So you discover that they exist. You go to their website. You're convinced to give it a try. You book your day and time, and you arrive. When you arrive, you have to sign in. So someone greets you at the door and they bring you in. And they have their own apps to figure out where should this person go to, like what's their starting time, what's the starting hall, that kind of stuff. Do they start on 1 or on 10? And then the person starts, but they want to order something, then they want to have a drink when they get back at the clubhouse, for example. And then they leave, so they agree to that, and goodbye, and then they get an email, at the end, like, hey, how did you experience that golf membership for a day? Like all these things together, that's the whole service, and it's much more than just like the screens you're looking at. It's the whole experience of, I want to feel like a rich dude on a golf course for one day, So yeah, it's much more human centered instead of human behind the screen centered. And I'm sure if a service designer is listening now, they're very angry. Like, no, there's way more to it. But that's my limited experience at doing like 1 or 2 service design projects. It's really about the emotion of a full service.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I'm a fan of like ditching like the word user as part of it. Like you had mentioned before, like customer experience. Because if you've ever been in a user interview and you refer to them as a user, it feels like very dehumanizing. It's like,
yeah,
we love to speak to our users. Like, okay, well, I'm a customer. I paid for your service.
Yeah.
It feels more personal considering I'm a customer rather than a user.
Okay. Yeah. So you would say replace user with customer. And in practice, I can get into that. I think so too. I do projects where we talk about researchers, about agencies, about brands, and because they are the type of users you get in different projects. But when you are talking more about like UX vision, you're writing on social media, or you're writing a blog, or you create a video or product, I think then it's fine to talk about a user, because you're not actually in a project. It's just more a concept. But do you think that's enough to change UX as a label because of the U?
Well, in your example, that makes sense. But you want to think of it like holistically, like who are we servicing? Like our clients, and there's a connotation with that. So it's less about users. Like to me, when I imagine it's like users need a thing to do or a tool to use. A client needs to be, I'm thinking about the hotel experience, and also the example you had given, like what is their user, what that caught myself, what is their user journey, to use a industry term. Like I want to think of the holistic experience so that customer is happy from every touch point. So I think there's it's a reframing of how to like tackle the customer's problems.
Yeah. Well, it's also about the mindset, on the job. It could potentially replace the whole persona stuff. Like if you just have the name right, like, oh wait, yes, we're talking about golfers here, or researchers, or buyers. It happens to me when we talk about website visitors. Like I tend to call them users as well, but I feel a visitor sounds just as distant as a user.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing when companies consider employees as resources. It gives like the same connotation. It's like a disconnect from the individual that's working.
Yeah,
or in this case,
that happened to me. In my corporate job years back, I forgot to submit my timesheet, and so my manager emailed me a screenshot of his Excel, And then everyone in that screenshot who didn't submit their timesheet yet, they got like this remark like, "Hey, you're late, fix it." And then it's not even "Hey Nick" or "Hey, the other people." In the screenshot, you could just see like your employee number and then number of hours missing. It was very, very cold and distant. So yeah, resources, human resources, doesn't sound that good.
No, well, they're also rebranding also in the theme of brand. I think they're called people now, like the people department, which again
Yeah,
becomes more humanizing.
that's true. That's true. But it's a fun label, but it doesn't change too much in practice, I assume. And that's also one of my main like concerns or frustrations with all the design labels. Like we give something a new label to better fit an evolving job,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't change too much like in practice. UX designer, product designer, it's the same thing but just different in time.
Yeah, true. Though to be fair, well, this is an example of something that happened maybe 5 or 7 years ago. But when I was hiring at one of the companies I worked at, we were looking for a UI UX designer.
Yeah,
That was the term back then. And then I had UX designers who were applying. And like the goal of putting UI UX designer was looking for someone who can do both, who can do the UX part, but also can do the high fidelity design.
yeah,
And then when I received like some UX designers portfolio, it was just UX,
yeah,
like not a stitch of. It was clear that they were handing over like their work after they were done to the UI designer.
right.
Um, so and that's, I think it's just, again, back to the point of just communicating what we're looking for. And we mentioned like what we do changes and evolves, but I think it's just about communicating what we expect that person
Yeah,
to do.
yeah, yeah. Well, that I clearly see that, and I agree. You don't have the time to go through 100 applicants and 80 of them have the wrong qualifications
Mm.
because you've been unclear. Like, that's a waste of everybody's time, not only yours, but also, giving people false hope, which I don't think we should do.
Mm.
They should feel like they, apply to something where they can succeed. But if you look at development, I don't think people say I'm a JavaScript developer. They do say like I'm a front end developer with experience or specialized in React or JavaScript or Alpine or one of the big JavaScript names. But we don't do that in design. We are a UX designer or UI designer or product designer. We, if you would follow the front end approach, you would say I'm a product designer with, a proficiency or specialty in, the first half of the UX process or user discovery, or a product designer expert in UI polish or anything like it.
Mm.
But I feel like we create a new label, every other month.
Yeah. Well, because like your point, we're evolving so much.
Yeah.
Like, well, at least when I started, it was web designer, like
Mhm.
person who designs things on the web.
Yeah.
And we were strictly focused on, well, we had the responsibility, well, some people had the responsibility of doing the design work and also some of the implementation, or at least the front end portion of
Yeah.
it. And then as time moved on, this UI UX title came about that was shiny and new. And then we started focusing more on that UX piece. And then I think it became harder to juggle like front end design and the UX process. So like at
Mhm.
some point we had given up the coding part, or at least some of us did, at least me particularly. And then we were asked to do more focused on UI UX. And then I think that's the shift that happened to the development, where like it was less about like I'm a Java developer, then it became front end and back end, and now I think now the standard is, or depending on the company, is now I'm a full stack developer, which means I do now both ends, which is the front end piece used to be held by design, but now now there's a clear separation between the two.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that may, in that case, I'm a bit harsh there, because full stack. I feel like full stack is like the developer version of product design, or the other way around. Product design being the full stack version, but then for design, because it does include a whole UX and UI process, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think full stack just means does back end and kind of does front end for some people.
Really okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I can do it. I can do it all with a caveat.
Yeah.
But like to your point, I can do it all, but my focus, or what I'm really good at, is whether it's front end or back end or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, that's I think that's something people always say, like you can do one thing really well and then a few things kind of well. So that's what you're saying about full stack, right? Like lots of back end, a little bit of front end.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. I find full stack means I'm better at doing back end development, but I have proficiency in I'm able to do front end. But not as well as I can do back end. And then you'd see, then you would hire a front end developer it's clear that they specialize in the front end. It just depends on how invested in design the company is, because you'd hire someone in front end because you want it to be perfect.
Right. Yeah. To supplement the full stack backend specialist.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that also brings us to like the new unicorn on the block, which is the UX engineer or UI engineer. What are your thoughts there?
That's been an interesting one, because for a long time I was like, ooh, that's a shiny new title that I can get into. I have a bit of the background, but I'd have to do some courses and some learning. But it seems very interesting. Like the fact that you have the ability to do everything means you have the full scope and context. But I'm concerned about the mental, like the context switching that you'd have to do.
Yeah.
So like you design something, you do the research, discovery, do the user flows, and then you have to implement it. But the value I think in having like the two separate is that there's a bit of accountability. So when I was a web designer, and then you'd have a lot of pressure to kind of deliver quickly. You design things you knew you can design quickly versus designing the most ideal user experience or like the greatest design to be like superficial about it. So it kind of stifles creativity in a sense that you're like, okay, I'm under the gun. I have to make sure that we launch this feature or this thing promotion quickly. I'm just going to stay to this templated version. I'm not going to go outside of my wheelhouse, and it kind of stifles your growth, I found.
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting one, because I am also in that in between state. I am doing both, as you know, like design and front end. For one project, I discovered the context switching, like you say, is quite rough, but also it follows each other, quite well. You design something, and then you have feedback and user input and like all the things you would typically do. At some point you say, okay, this is good enough, or it's ready to be developed. And then you divide your development resources, your human resources, to say like, well, you're going to do this bit and you're going to do that bit. So it, my design work is done and I can do something new. And if it's an extension of that design work in code, the context switching isn't that bad. But it is switching, but because you do go from like your design tool to something more, code based, and then having to go back to design because you run into some sort of app breaking bug or something, or something you didn't think about, but user flow wise, that's tough. So yeah, you're 100% correct there. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's my main response to what you're saying.
Do you consider yourself as a UX? Like, could you then consider yourself as a UX engineer, considering the work that you do today?
I would say so. Yes, I'm fairly confident that I can design, or I can recreate anything I can design, one-on-one in code. Using the frameworks that I know, of course. So I have React and Laravel as two like main platforms, and then Bootstrap and Tailwind as the CSS. What it looks like, a portion of it. And I'm currently learning how to make it more interactive. I'm lucky enough to work in one project where they are like, well, where they tell me like, okay, Nick, we appreciate you doing both, and we want you to learn more. What would be the next step for you? And then I told them like, okay, I can make everything static. Like I can take a Figma design, turn it into code. If you put it side by side, you don't see a difference, but it doesn't move. Like nothing works. So I want to make it work. So if you click a menu, a drop down opens, for example. And so that's what I'm learning now. And that's
okay.
That's in the tall stack. If you talk about full stack and different things, so that's Tailwind, Alpine, Livewire, I think, and Laravel.
Okay.
So I can do the final L, the T, and now I'm learning the A. So I have one L left.
Okay. Because I was curious. That's interesting. Because I always thought that the UX engineer title mean that you know how to? Because I see like you had mentioned you're kind of advancing and kind of getting the L.
Yeah.
But then at some point, does the UX engineer understand backend as well?
I'm not sure how far it's going to go, because most of my work in this capacity is with people who are highly skilled back-end developers who absolutely hate CSS and front end. It's different for each browser, and it looks different on different size screens, mobile, tablet, everything. And they're more than happy to give that stuff away to someone who enjoys it. Me, I really enjoy that, like the puzzling of CSS. So the reason why I'm unsure is because I don't know if they want to give away the thing they enjoy most to someone else.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess, this goes back to like the job title, like UX. If we're focusing on UX engineer, you could have more or less proficiency in the backend piece. It's more that you're able to, I guess the core of it is that you're able to implement something you designed, at least front end wise.
Well, it's really scary too, for me at least, because design, it's super safe. Like it's just design. Like it's this is very disrespectful from me, but it's basically a screenshot you're making or a mock-up, like when it's Figma only. Then if you go and turn it into static code, it's a little bit more dangerous. Like you can do something, using spaghetti code, and it would take long to load, and performance is terrible. But okay, they can fix it in the pull request and review and that kind of stuff. But then if you would do backend, database stuff, that's where you can really break something, And then, like me, I'm learning on the go. As you know, I started doing this because more and more of my leads asked me, like, can you develop it too? And I was like, no. And then they went with someone else. So I decided to learn. So I'm learning on the job. And I feel like learning about a database on the go, that's a breaking news headline in the making. Database disappears, or client data is open and on the streets, that kind of stuff. So I would need lots of guidance from someone with experience there to really learn about best practices and security and that kind of stuff. So I feel like that step is way bigger to take on your own compared to just figuring out Tailwind.
Yeah, because there's all the other nuances to it too. Because I remember, like just using Git, like just for like creating branches and doing your pull requests. Like sometimes that would you get into trouble because people are working on different features and different branches, and you'd have to do merges, and then you have to resolve those conflicts, which was always a headache for me. Which I had to like sometimes just like help. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. There's we touched the same component. I don't know which code to take or how to merge this correctly.
Yeah.
So there's all that nuance to it as well.
That's where AI has been the most helpful for me, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like most people talk about speed. I read today on LinkedIn, someone very proudly shared their new portfolio website, and they were like, I didn't touch code at all. This is all Vibe designed, Vibe coded. And I was like, yeah, I can tell, because it looks it looks terrible.
looks vibey.
Yeah, it looks yeah, that's perfectly put it. It looks vibey, and that helps. Like I use AI for repetitive work, and speed advantage there. But when I started working on React for a client, the first thing I did, it's mostly redesign work there. They have an existing outdated app. I redesign it, they approve, and then I put it into React code. Like that's the workflow. So I work on an existing file. I take the entire file and have Claude explain it to me. Like, tell me what's going on here. Like, is there anything like best practice or anything strange or anything custom? Like, what does it do and why? And that takes a bit more time compared to Vibe coding it in. But it's a professional client with MRR over ARR over 1 million. So I don't want to mess it up. And I've been learning so much because of that, asking for education first approach, that now when I look at a file, there's more and more bits and pieces where I'm like, oh, I see what they did there, because Claude told me before. And I use the same with every bit of feedback that I get. So I put in a PR, and then they will review it, and I get comments like, hey, you did this over here, but you should have done this and that, and how about this? And then I ask again, Claude, like, what do you think about this feedback? Explain to me why they would say this. And that's been super helpful to learn. So that's one of the two big AI use cases for me to learn and to assist me in becoming more of a UX engineer.
Yeah, that seems like the major unlock. The fact that you can paste in code and have it explain something to you. Like, I wish we had this years ago.
Yeah.
I remember when I had applied to a company, and they required, it was a web designer position, and they required CSS3, which I had no experience with. I was like, I was like, a little white lie, a little white lie. Yeah, sure. I know how to do it. I know CSS3.
Oh yeah, that's what I do all the time.
And then I got the job, and then it was 2 weeks to start. So I spent 2 weeks learning CSS3, which, I mean, to be fair, isn't the hardest thing, but it's still a new concept to learn.
Yeah.
But
Did you
it,
get away
like
with it? Like
yes,
did it? Oh, nice.
yeah, I did. Well, because I took the time to kind of learn it, and then also when I was there, I was also collaborating with other developers, so I asked them questions. So um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
anything on the job learning is great because you have reference. You're not starting from scratch. You have like their existing code, so you see how their current CSS or
Yeah.
CSS3 was kind of styled. So I use that as reference. So
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's very helpful. Like if they like, I still require a lot of help to develop something new. So I have that more experienced developer that told me to learn about the A and tall. I asked him if he could, put together a skeleton of all the files. So it was a dashboard that had a sidebar and had a sticky bottom bar on scroll and that kind of stuff. So he put in all the placeholders, like here's your sidebar file, here's the main file, that kind of stuff. So, I couldn't have done that on my own because I don't really trust AI to, be clear and specific. When I asked him like, what would be a starting point? Like, I have no clue if that's correct. But now I know from someone with tons of experience that this is the right starting spot.
interesting. And I'm curious where you think your next. So once you, if I treat you like a Pokemon, once you once you've caught them all, um, what's next after that?
Yeah,
How do you
I don't
imagine
know.
like your work evolving?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I don't know yet because most of my evolving Pokemon and evolving. I really like Pokemon, but that's because I'm 32, so I grew up with Pokemon in the 90s. But anyway, my 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 evolving of my role mostly happened because of perception. What I like, the main reasons I didn't get a job. And at some point, you'll see a pattern.
Hmm.
Another pattern used to be like, well, you don't have any big clients. You know, so you probably cannot handle all the politics and stakeholder management. Very annoying feedback to get, but something that's probably right. So I found the biggest client I could find that would have me, and then that solved that bit of feedback. So I don't know. I feel like I'm still ahead of the curve. Being a designer plus developer, UX engineer, like whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
I don't see many designers do the same thing because lots of designers I talk to are very, like I mentioned before, very protective of like, no, I do design, period. It has to be the UX way, period. So that's, I feel like I'm safe for quite a while, but I
Okay.
will always have my radar like floating around, like, seeing like, do I get, you know, do I get shot down more often? Do I lose more leads? If so, why? Is there a pattern? And then based on that, I will evolve and learn.
Okay.
So yeah. So I have no clue where I'm going to go towards. Probably more coding first.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
How
hard to
about
tell.
yourself? How about yourself? Because now it's a lot of UX engineer talk about my experience, but you are in house. My father has been working in an agency for well over 30 years. Like almost his entire career has been like one employer. I
Hmm.
don't feel like that's the standard anymore today. Like,
No,
do you have a plan or a goal? 5 years from now.
I think it's still fuzzy for me as well. Like I have so many. I had like interest in like the UX engineer.
Mhm.
That may not be for me anymore. I see myself going to more strategy. To kind of
Right.
loop back to our session last conversation. I feel like that's the strategic part is where I'm going to be focusing,
Yeah.
while leveraging AI tools that are coming up.
Right.
Um, whatever that turns into, I don't know what job title that is, but I just think in-house job titles are changing as well. Will be changing as well. So product designer is now the official new. This is the gold standard. So you're a product designer. This is what you do. You come in. You're able to do end to end. You're able to collaborate with all the stakeholders, speak the language of engineering, speak the language of product. But I just see that like some of these new tools just facilitating parts of the job that I don't want to focus on. So maybe like to your earlier point about like what a product designer is, like it's product designer with a focus in X. So like maybe I'm a product designer that has a focus in the strategic part. So I had this thought yesterday of like, it goes along the lines of like why designers are afraid to let go of design. I feel like AI might be like the junior designer if we hire to do the work that we don't want to do, and it feels less of like someone taking something away from me. So we can all become the art director that we've always wanted to become. I think that's whatever you call that. I think the art director in the product space is, I think that's where I'm heading, where eventually like managing a team, etc. Yes. But I feel like an interesting challenge is seeing how I can art direct with some of the tools that have the capabilities of working on my behalf.
Right. Yeah. Is that direction in any way influenced by concern about job security around AI, or because of AI?
Maybe. I think everything I do now it goes back to like one event that happened to me. I remember when a friend of mine talked to me about Bitcoin years and years ago. He's like, "Oh, you should invest in this." I'm like, I don't know what this Bitcoin is. Let me just leave it alone. Well, 3 years later, he struck it rich. So I decided that from that day forth that I would just try everything new at least once and see where that goes. So that goes along with personal brand. That goes along with like this AI stuff. Like it seems to be. I think initially it was a hype, but I think now it just becomes another tool, and we can probably lose the prefix AI. It's just like another tool, but just like we have tools that we can leverage that we can execute. We can hyper focus on the things that we're good at, and then also facilitate the things that we're not super good at.
Yeah.
Which I think just encompasses like that entrepreneurial spirit. So if you're a CEO or a solopreneur, you're the everything person. And then as you want to grow your company, then it's about delegation. And that's a hard jump because you're trusting someone else to do something that you can do 100% that may only be able to do 60%.
Right.
But I think baby steps, you can leverage AI as like, okay, if this thing fails, I can yell at it via text saying, "Hey, what are you doing there?" It dips your toes into that space, which might be interesting.
Yeah. So in a few years' time, when we do episode number 100, 150, I might be talking to Tyler, the product manager.
Could be. You never know.
Because I feel like that's the accepted seat at the table to talk strategy.
It is. It depends if you're, I think for most companies that's the route. I think you have design, you have product management, and then once you've kind of hit the director status, it's usually PM, where like a designer turns into this PM role, or the PM graduates into like the next Pokemon evolution. But some companies have a good like design culture. So in those types of companies, I think you can retain some kind of design variation to your title.
Yeah, true. I cannot stop looking at that lamp you have just behind you over your shoulder. since you said Pokemon, because it looks like you have a Charizard's burning tail behind you already.
Oh, it's ready to evolve.
Yeah, it looks like you're growing wings, but that might be just that might be a few episodes too early. Anyway, I'm also curious about levels of seniority. I had it in mind since you said you were a senior designer, and then you mentioned director, and there's a difference in how companies see seniority, depending from company to company. As a junior designer, I felt like I was ready to jump to a senior position, and I went to a new company, and then they offered me a job and they called me a junior designer, and I was very annoyed. Like my little ego had a big bruise on it, and this is like 2018 or 2019 or something. So recently I removed all the senior prefix labels from like what I am today. I think it might be still on LinkedIn, but let's be safe here and say I started removing senior from what I am. Mostly again, SEO proofness and catching more fish, catching more Pokemon. I don't want to exclude a company where they do not have senior as a thing, because I've also worked in companies where everyone's just a UX designer, like no senior, no junior. You are a UX designer or a design lead. And a design lead, the only difference compared to a designer is that you are managing a group of designers, so I started removing that. I'm curious what you think there, but also at the same time, being realistic in how these levels exist. If you have any goal or stopping point, perhaps, where you feel like I don't want to go beyond this type of seniority for whatever reason.
That's interesting. That might be a distinction between like in-house and freelance, though. That seems like a strategic play on your end, where it's like your UX product design a title. I think in-house, there's like with titles comes pay and more responsibility, but like back to your junior like title. So the more levels you go up, the more your responsibility it kind of expands, at least in-house, at least. So junior, you're hyper focused on your specific area, and then you become mid-level, your area grows, and as you go up, what you affects goes beyond just the design department. So it's less about like just what you do in design, and then it affects maybe product and engineering, and then it affects across departments when you get to like senior, and then staff above that. So you have staff product designer, so you affect company wide, and then there's principal above that, which is like the overlord of design. I feel like that's the last step, unless there's senior principal. But I'm not up to date in all the levels.
No, me neither. The biggest one I've seen was senior vice president of design. But that feels a few years away in terms of promotion.
Yeah. Plus, there's the two tracks, right? So if you want to go the management route or the IC route, I think that's the IC route, and then the management is like design manager, senior design manager, principal, like the same like prefix apply.
Yeah. Well, you need to reach a certain company size to need a normal plus senior version of one role. I have perhaps a bit of advice for people looking for a job still when you talk about job titles, and that's that you should have a 90% ready base version of your resume, where you have the design is ready, your name and your picture are all there, your experience is, and the about you section and your skills, all that kind of stuff, it's more or less finished, and all you have to change depending, to go from 90 to 100% for each job application that you fill out is the label and perhaps a few keywords. So I had a resume for UX design, for UX research, and one for being a designer in a Dutch government body, because they had specific requirements, and I didn't make up the requirements, in a way that I could have a white lie to say like I have them, but they had a certain way of labeling them that I didn't really need in non-government work. So I had, it's a bit more work in the beginning, but just being in a position of having a few resume variations ready to go, except for 5 minutes of tweaking, I think is a great way to, increase your odds of getting invited for a next round. So in today's day and age, have a product design resume, have a UX design resume, and or a variation for whatever specific label of design you want to go into.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. And like, for people who think that's lying, I don't think it is. I think it's like we have these titles, but the titles just denote what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And like, regardless of like what they're asking for, I think most designers can fit the bill.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not meant at all to be deceiving or lying. It's just if you've been in design for 5 years and you've done lots of UX research work, lots of UX design work, you shouldn't make one big resume, multiple pages where you put in all of the experience that you have in both fields. It's good to have. Perhaps that's something to mention as well. It shouldn't be exactly the same. The projects you mention in your resume can differ from application to application. Like, highlight your best UX research projects for your UX resume, of course, but leave them out for your UX engineering resume if you have one. And be very strict about it. Don't vibe code it. It's your business card. If I can rant a little bit more about resumes, but my main tip was, have a specific one for a specific role and grow your collection of resumes that way. Gotta catch them all.
He beat me to it.
Yeah.
It was on the tip of my tongue there.
Yeah. But that's all I have to say. I'm not going to bore our listeners with all the different job titles that I had like 10 years ago. I don't feel that's relevant anymore. I'm just curious to see where this all goes. Product design, if it will stick or if it will change in a few years. But we'll probably do a new episode about it around that time.
Yeah, and I see it maybe being a year or two out. We'll see something perk up. That'll be the shiny new thing that we all chase.
Yeah. Curious what you think. You don't have to answer it now, and we have to leave something to the imagination, and also what our listeners and viewers think. That main question being, will the label that will replace product design have AI in the label? AI product design, AI engineer design, or anything? Yes or no? That's something to think about.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
My guess, if history is a great indicator, probably yes, and then we'll remove it because it won't be relevant.
Yeah. I think we will skip that in between step and go directly towards the step that you just mentioned. Like we'll go directly to and then we remove it step.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think we've unless vibe designer is a title. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I'll probably skip the AI prefix.
Yeah. All right. I really enjoy these talks, but talking so much about labels makes me a little bit tired.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think we as a design community, we have a bit of an identity crisis. I think we have to stick with one label call ourselves that thing and make sure the world understands what it is. And with that being said, I think product design is way more clear than UX design. You design a product versus you design the user's experience. I think that's a step into the right direction.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. So what's up on our menu for next time?
I think we talked about it evolving. Well, it started with how many clicks is too many clicks, but I think we're going to evolve it into design myths that we are going to be attempting to bust in our next episode.
Yeah, that's a good one. The things we believe that is secretly holding us back, but also the myths non-designers believe about us, where we are like, no, that's not true. So it goes both ways. It's educational for us, but it's also, perhaps something that can help us be better understood by our stakeholders or friends at parties.
Ah, yes. Friends at parties. That's always a harder one.
Yeah. So what do you do? Well, I'm a UX designer. Oh, dang. Now I have to explain it.
Yeah.
But that's something for next time. Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Great chat.
Yeah.
Till the next time.
See you the next time.
That was a great episode. So if you like this content and want to hear more, please like and subscribe.
Yeah. And if you want to see more, please go to designtablepodcast.com, Spotify, Apple Music, all the big players and more.